Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and I know you know that. But folks, I just love to remind myself how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair, doing this for a living, living my dream. And the only reason I can do what I do is because you're out there doing what you're doing. Folks, if you're not out there liking and subscribing and sharing and doing everything else, sending me all these wonderful DMs that I get, and I promise with both hands, I'm going to get everything responded to. You folks have really been sending a lot lately, and that really helps us a ton. And I respond to them all personally. So I promise we're going to get you some answers, guys. Just hang in there. But again, if you're not out there doing what you're doing, I can't do what I'm doing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, if you are a friend of the program, and I bet you are, you know what time it is. We need to pay a couple of bills. So let's take a sip of our preferred beverage here. Man, that is fantastic stuff. And you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram, look them up, check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean cup of joe, folks. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is one of the biggest reasons why we support them. If you're out there and you're a veteran, I want to thank you and your family from the bottom of my heart, because if you're not doing what you did, then I don't get to sit here and talk at all about anything that I want to talk about. So you folks have done your work, and it's time for us to honor you. Freedom Hill Coffee feels the same way. Go look them up, check them out, and get a cup. This stuff is fantastic. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Folks, tell them Power Man sent you. Let me get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table from me. There we go. All right, folks. We have a great guest with us today. I've already enjoyed talking to him, and I think we're going to have some stories that are going to put a smile on everybody's face. This gentleman is a husband. He's a father of two. He's got a boy and a girl. He's a tech leader. He's figuring out what it really means to raise boys in today's world. And we all know this is a rough, rough place to raise men. He's also the host of the hit podcast, Raising Men. So I want you all to go check that out. I have. It's a very, very good podcast. And this guy has a voice that's almost as good as mine. I got to tell you. So, and he's got a story about it. But folks, please welcome to the show, Shaun Dawson. Shaun, how you doing, brother?
Roy, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. It is an absolute honor to be here. And boy, you made my day. Saying that my voice is even anywhere near yours is just the biggest praise that I could imagine receiving. It's just, I wish I could just fall asleep to your dulcet tones every day.
Wow.
But I do come by it honestly. My dad was a sportscaster. I was a competitive beach volleyball player. And through that, I ended up getting involved in a company called the Volleyball Network. And what they were trying to do was live stream indoor volleyball games, like, just regular old high school, kind of level club volleyball games. And I was one of their announcers. And I was doing a game with my brother one time, and we were getting into the banter about it. And it was a really, really great game. These two sets of girls on either side of the net went back and forth. I think there must have been 30 touches on this particular play. And my brother mentions we're on air live, and he says, "Wow, what a long play." And I said, "Yeah, these young girls are sure touching a lot of balls today." And both of us just realized what I said, and we turned on the cough thing, and we just lost it. There was about a minute and a half of dead air because we could not speak. We were just laughing so hard. And that was kind of the end of my sports announcing journey following my father's footsteps.
It's a good thing the FTC wasn't listening to that
Oh,
broadcast
no
right at
kidding.
that moment.
It went over the internet, but man, this is not what the grandparents of these little girls needed to hear.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I love that. All right. Well, hey, I told you do sound like a sportscaster, man. So, I guess everything works out. But I mean, honestly, you sound fantastic on the podcast too. And so that was one of the first things I noticed when I turned that on. It kind of blew me away. The Now I am curious, a little bit more about who Shaun Dawson is. I mean, we know what you're doing now, and you're talking about, raising men, and we're definitely going to get into that. But, who is Shaun Dawson? What were you doing before all this? What leads you to want to do this kind of work out in the open in public?
Yeah, That's a great question. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I started my career. I graduated at the University of Texas with an electrical engineering degree right in 1999, about 8 seconds before the internet bubble burst the first time.
Ooh,
And I was right in the mix of that. And I loved it. I was in tech. I built a couple of companies. I bought a company. I sold a company. I bought some other companies. I've done all that stuff. And looking down about 3 months ago, I started getting into a career transition. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I'm still in that transition. But one of the things that I realized is that, I'm an older dad. I had kids in my 40s. You called me a young buck, but I'm not. Um, and when my son was first born, I did not have this natural instant connection that people talk about. And I felt ashamed about that. I felt like, man, am I a sociopath or something like that? And what I discovered, I finally opened up about this with a buddy of mine. And he went, "Oh yeah, that's the way I felt too." And what I found out is that that's the rule, not the exception. The exception is the father who just falls magically in love with his son the way his wife does. Now, my wife didn't have this issue. But the rule is we develop it later, but we don't even talk about it. And around that same time, that same buddy of mine, we were talking. He said, "Oh, I got to talk to you about something." And I said, "Oh, well, as long as you're not telling me, you're about to tell me that you and your wife are getting divorced, we're in good shape." And he was quiet. And I went, "Oh." And that was the deal. And he ends up telling me the story. And my initial reaction was, "Oh, well, we got to fix this and all of this stuff." And then he told me what he'd been experiencing the last 10 years about what his life was like and the struggles that he had had. And my first thought about that was, how did I not know this? This is one of my closest friends. We've been friends since eighth grade. And I didn't know about any of this. What kind of friend am I? And then my next thought was, wait a minute, I have my own challenges and I haven't shared any of those with him either. What kind of friend am I? And what kind of friend am I allowing him to be to me? And the fact is, my wife has 8 different people that she tells every detail of her life to. Great friends. And we don't have that. As men, our culture is all about, I don't know, stoicism or keeping things in or bottling it up and, shoulder to the grindstone, tough it out, rub some dirt into it. And there's value in that. Your ability to do that is important. But we've lost a lot of the institutions that created the brotherhood, our ability to connect with other men. Those institutions have crumbled, and we need to replace them. And that has led to what I consider to be a masculinity crisis. And so when I look at my girl versus my boy, and I look at the world that they're growing up into, our culture is going to welcome my girl with open arms. It's not going to be a problem. But my boy, it's it's a different thing. It feels like he's swimming upstream, like the world is beating him up to force him to learn to act against his nature. And a lot of the discourse about masculinity has gotten very polarized in a way that I think is really unhealthy. And I wanted to be part of the antidote to that. And I'm struggling with it. I'm struggling with how to figure out how to make sure that my son grows up to be an excellent man. And that's my job. That's my one job with respect to him.
right,
And, I figure I might as well have that struggle out in public because the holding it in thing isn't working.
right on. I love that you decided to do the podcast and that you talk about what you talk about on there. I don't think there's anywhere near enough of us out here in the space doing this. And it's for that reason. It's because, even we aren't talking about it. People we know aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
And unless there are more and more and more men out there talking about it, then nobody else does. Um,
Yeah.
and it's one of those where the first guy through the wall gets bloody. and everybody else can then follow through the wall.
Big time.
But
Yeah.
we need
There
more
there
guys
is
going
an
through the wall, man.
yeah. There is an immune system that is trying not to allow us to talk about masculinity in a healthy way.
Yeah,
And so you end up with these two sides of the equation. You get one side that is just saying that all masculinity, it's toxic and it's bad and it needs to
right.
be suppressed. And then there's another side of that story that embraces the the toxicity, and it basically defines manhood as being an asshole. And that's not the right way either. There is
Yeah.
masculinity is healthy. Masculinity has been around since the birth of humans. And it's changed with, back 60,000 years ago, we were hunter gatherers and we had to kill, saber-toothed tigers or whatever. And there was one form of masculinity that involved a lot of physical prowess and involved a lot of courage. Well, now in our modern world, it's way different than that, but it still has a place. And masculinity is life word. It is healthy. We just have to have a healthy, positive vision of it. And I don't know if that gets you likes and retweets and clicks on YouTube the way that some of the other stuff does, but we need to figure out how to change the dynamic there. Otherwise, I got news for you. Men will not thrive. They're not thriving today. And we need to turn that around.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with that 100%. That statement that we, even though we're stronger than we were, we're not thriving by any stretch of the imagination. And it takes a lot more, a lot more of this, of men standing up, forming groups, trying to find themselves. So there's a lot that needs to be done. The You come to this sort of realization based on your own son. You're watching your own son. Now, was there something that took place with your son where you kind of went, "Oh, hey, well, one way or the other, I'm a little worried about this," or is this the general sort of state of the union that you're noticing, and then you're going, I don't want my boy to have to go through this.
Yeah, there were a couple of things like that. The first thing was the State of the Union. I saw these big cultural forces that I felt were working against me and him in that way. And I needed, you know, just holding our breath and hoping that the culture gets better is not a strategy. I needed to develop a process. Like I said, I'm an engineer. I need to develop a system to and tactical um, uh, practices in order to fix that. And frankly, part of that is the podcast has enabled me. I've gotten so much great positive feedback. I've had amazing guests, and basically, if nothing else, it's an opportunity for me to make friends and interact with some of the most amazing people in the world, guys like you, doing the kind of work that you are doing. And that alone has made the effort worth 10 times what it has taken for me. So that was part of it. I saw these big cultural forces, but there were a couple of specific individual things that happened too. And the first of them was my boy was about 18 months old, and he went over to his mom and he gave his mom a kiss on the lips. And then he came over to me, and when he went to kiss me on the lips, I turned my head and had him kiss me on the cheek. And my wife said, "Well, why did you turn your head?" And I responded reflexively to her, and I said, "Men don't kiss each other on the lips." And that kind of felt like a burr in my brain. And I thought through it the whole day and into the next day. And the next day I went to my wife and I said, remember when this thing happened? She goes, "Yeah, I thought that was a little weird too, but I didn't say anything." And I said, "I feel like that's a remnant of how I was brought up. And I was brought up in a way that isn't necessarily adaptive to today's world. And I really need to inspect that. I really need to check my reflexes there. And some of them are going to be good. I don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but suppressing my desire to express affection to my boy as a result of, I don't know, some kind of social stigma or whatever. Like I don't even know what it is. What am I going to turn him gay or something and that's some bad thing? Like that's not healthy. And I realized that I needed to take a closer look at what my reflexes were there. And I needed to
Mm.
really inspect and be purposeful about how I was raising him. And that was
Wow.
kind of the kernel that led to all of this.
Wow. That's quite a story, man. I mean, when you said he was 18 months old, that was a little further back than I thought you were going to go. But you were very cognizant of this then at a very
Well,
young age.
that's what it started,
Yeah.
and it took me a long time. It took me a while to really figure out how I wanted to integrate that into my life. And I mean, reflexes. These are habits, right? Our way of dealing with people are habitual, and changing habits is really hard.
Yeah. Have you found that that your relationship with your parents then has had some sort of impact in terms of how you think about how you're reacting to your kids, and that sort of thing? Is any of that carry over from when you were little also, or is this you examining the modern day landscape?
I would say that it's mostly examining the modern day landscape. My mother passed away when I was 21,
Mm.
which was one of the formative things that happened in my life. She was such she was an angel. She was absolute. I was blessed with one of the best mothers that ever walked the earth. She was incredible. We had such a close relationship, and her loss was really a formative thing in my life.
Okay.
My dad was amazing, is amazing. He's still around, and he's amazing in his own way. He was an amazing provider. He was a sportscaster. He was, I would say, one of the best sportscasters of his era. And he worked really hard. He went to work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and came home at 2 o'clock in the morning and slept until maybe 11 a.m. and then did it all over again, 7 days a week. And he was often traveling internationally and doing the Olympics and all that sort of thing. And it led to a really great childhood, actually, because I used to watch when we were in Los Angeles, I would watch Dodger games from the dugout with the players and, learn all about that. And it was amazing. Um, but, he was more of a peer than a father. And it was, he grew up in a different time. And if you think about how do you define success as a father? Well, one way to define it is that you improved on what your father did. And by that metric, my dad really knocked the ball out of the park. He was a great dad in that respect. But there's a lot of mistakes that he made that I would like to not repeat. And the only way to do that is to make sure that I'm really intentional about what I do and I inspect and I'm willing to look at and not be defensive about what it feels like I want to do and try to be more intentional about what I am doing and keep the end in mind. Define what I mean by being a good dad. Define what I mean about cultivating healthy masculinity in my boy and what excellence means and all of that.
Yeah.
And so, I would say that most of my motivation came from those bigger social forces, but there are aspects of how I was brought up that factor into it as well.
Wow. All right. I mean, you're blessed. You certainly
I
to
really, I really
have
am.
parents
I've
like that. That's
had
amazing.
an amazing life, and I've been very, very, very fortunate.
That's great to hear, though, man. It really is. So many of us in the space, we have the opposite. We're
Yeah,
trying to make up for, what
yeah.
we didn't get, type of thing. You're out there trying to continue to propagate it. Say, hey, this is what I got. I want to push this forward. It's almost like
I've
you're
never
paying it
thought
forward a
about
little
it
bit.
that way, but you're exactly right. I
Yes.
want to pay it forward. That's exactly right.
Very cool. Very cool. Great reason to have a podcast. So, and that kind of brings us to, all right. So you're having these emotions, you're thinking these things with your son, and somewhere in your brain it says podcast. I need to tell the world about this. I got to put the message out there. I got to help other men, other fathers, right? Where's that come from, and why podcasting?
Man, that I I actually don't have a good answer for that. If I were a religious person, I would tell you that God was pushing me to do this. I'm not a religious person. And what I can tell you is I actually can't nail it down intellectually, but I felt drawn to it. And I'll tell you, this is an interesting thing. Um, I really struggle with sharing plans that are important to me. There's something that happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My We used to go to this church, Hollywood Presbyterian Church in Hollywood, California. And in my memory, the congregation was 60,000 people, and it was the size of a football stadium. And when we would go into the sanctuary, it was just this enormous thing. And I actually don't know how many people that sanctuary held, but obviously it wasn't that many. But in my mind's eye, in my memory, it was that big. And as we were walking to church one day, this young girl handed me a big, thick envelope, and then sheepishly ran away. And my mom was standing right there, my dad was standing right there, and I didn't know what this was. It had hearts all over it, and I hid it. And my dad was like, "What's that?" And he grabbed it from me and he opened it up, and it was like a love letter. And this girl was expressing that, she had a crush on me. It was the first time anything like this had ever happened to me. And my dad, then we walked into the sanctuary, and in front of what I remember to be 60,000 people, my dad stands up and in his booming sportscaster voice announces to the entire world that this girl had a crush on me and held up the letter and all of that stuff.
Oh,
I was mortified.
ouch.
And literally to this day, that one event, makes me feel very uncomfortable to share things that are important to me. I was proud of the fact that this girl did this thing, and the result was shame. Now, of course, my dad, he didn't do that on purpose. I mean, he thought it was something to be proud of, but it made me feel shame.
Yeah.
And it still affects me to this day. And so for a long time, I didn't even tell anybody I know. I didn't tell anyone that I was doing the podcast. I didn't even tell my wife. And when I finally started opening up about it, and the reason was I couldn't intellectually defend it. I couldn't sit here and tell you, Rory, why I wanted to do it and why I felt like it was worth the effort and the money and all of it. I couldn't tell you. But it just felt like something I needed to do. And I wasn't prepared to let people in like that because I didn't want to feel that shame. And when I finally started doing that, it was 2 weeks after I had released the first episodes, which was 3 months into the project. The reaction I started getting from people was amazing. It just absolutely bolstered it. Everybody was just, I can't believe you're doing that. I am so, how can I help you? And that the world needs this, and please do more of it, and all of that. The reaction I've gotten has just been incredible. It makes me sad that I lost those 3 months in sharing it with people because because it's been one of the most uh, fulfilling things I've ever done.
Wow. Okay. Goodness gracious. Um, I'm not sure I've ever heard that type of story that way before. Um, I appreciate your honesty because most people would just make up an answer right there. And you're going, hey, you know what? I don't really know. Whether it's, feeling called or like the universe pushed you that way or however you want to label it, right? It just seemed like the thing to go do. Here I am doing it. The part that shocked me the most was you didn't even tell your wife. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like, wow. So, out of all the people, what did your wife have to say when you came to her and said, "Well, honey, I'm doing this masculinity podcast and I've already released a couple episodes. Would you like to listen to one?"
So it was interesting. That story is told in two parts. The
Okay.
first part is I told her I was doing it. I already had an episode recorded and released, and I played it for her. And her reaction was to absolutely pick it apart.
Ooh,
She commented on the picture and, the audio quality and all of these different things. And what she was trying to do was improve it. She didn't realize, I don't think she realized it was already public, it was already done. And I wasn't looking for feedback in that way. I wasn't looking for constructive criticism. What I was looking for was something different, and it was demoralizing to me actually.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And um, but it was also really good feedback, and so I didn't, but it's just not what I was looking for. And she ended up coming back to, and she listened to 10 minutes of it or something like that. And about a month later, we were fully released and we'd had, six or seven episodes out there. And she started listening to in earnest. And she sent me this text message that I have saved that was, basically, I'm so glad you're doing this and I'm tremendously proud. And you're really putting something amazing out there in the world. And that was, as you can see, I get emotional thinking about it because that's what I needed. And and she wouldn't do it if she didn't feel that way. But it was, and that really struck the right chord for me. And it was also consistent with what I was getting elsewhere in the world. And so that was a tough thing to deal with initially, but then we got to a really, really amazing place about it. Now she listens to every episode and she tells me what she thinks, and it's really helpful.
Wow. Yeah, that story had a little bit of a twist to it. But
Yeah.
I hear you. I really do. Yeah, when we start that, really what we're looking for is sort of acceptance, and
Yeah.
maybe some support, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
because we're putting ourselves out there. But did you talk with her about like what the process was for you to
That
go through that and actually let that all out?
that's what I should have done.
Hmm.
If I had done that, then it would have been a way more constructive experience. She would have known what to do, and she would have been part of the sausage making. And I mean, if I were her, I might feel a little bit betrayed by that. Wait a minute, like, this is a big project. This is a big deal, and you're not even talking to me about it. And yeah, that's right. That's not the right way to do it.
Hmm.
She tells me every detail about everything in her work and all that stuff. And I've got a lot of projects going on, and I don't necessarily share them with her. And that's not the way that I ought to be. But I have this thing. I have the thing from when I was 10 years old, and the church thing happened.
Sure.
And this process is partly how I'm working through that.
Excellent. I love that. And podcasting should be therapy for the podcaster in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So I love that you're able to use it that way. When you went into it, did you go into it saying, all right, I'm just going to share my thoughts and it's going to be just me talking into the mic? Or did you go into it thinking, I'm going to bring on guests and this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to work? Or is it something that evolved?
Yeah, it's definitely that second thing. I feel like the biggest idiot in the room. I honestly feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I actually know intellectually that that's not true. I'm a pretty good dad, and my kids are flipping amazing. And but I don't feel like I have a whole lot of value to share just from myself. But what I really can do and what I am really, really good at is finding resources and bringing the right people and bringing the right message out there.
Yeah.
And so one of my superpowers is being able to, really identify great people at a glance. And um, that's really what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to cultivate an audience and a platform where you knew that you could just get really, really excellent people, and the people had something really meaningful to say, and we were going to have a great conversation, and it was going to be so it's really just insight into my journey trying to figure out this landscape and trying to find just the smartest people in the world to have conversations with.
Nice. Nice. And that's a great goal to have too, in terms of what you want to do with the podcast, and that kind of leads me to my next question that I always ask anybody who has a podcast, but especially in this space is, you know, what's the purpose of the podcast? What is it you hope to accomplish by doing what you're doing?
I want I want parents to recognize that there's an aspirational, healthy version of masculinity that we should embrace. That men are awesome and women are also awesome. And that is not, there's not a fixed pie there. The more awesome men get, the more awesome the women get. And we don't have to look at the world as a zero sum game. It is a positive sum game. And we, it is really striking to me the statistics and the data about how young men are struggling and the challenges that they face with social media and gambling and pornography in ways that can rewire their brain such that it makes them a lot less capable of navigating the world in a successful way. And our culture just doesn't seem to care. It's, oh, well, you've had the patriarchy for so long, you kind of deserve that. And that is not a healthy attitude. That is something that is it's going to lead us down to a really, really dark place. And social and our the way that we're getting our information, the way that we're getting our news, the way that we're getting our outlook on life is changing in ways that are polarizing us more. It's creating more anger and all of that stuff. And I wanted to be part of the antidote to that. And I wanted to put stuff out there in the world that, actually meaningfully helps people struggle with the deep, important problems in this world. It doesn't treat it like it's just no big deal and is it's not entertainment. It's something deeper than that. And that's the mission there.
Nice. You and I could probably talk about what's wrong with, the world and young men and everything else for a while, and I bet we
I
would
think we
agree on
could. Yeah.
90% of
And
it. Yeah.
there's definitely value in that.
Yeah.
But there's real value in talking instead about, okay, what do you do about it? What do I
Right.
do
Right.
tomorrow? Not how do I vote, or how do, what laws need to exist or blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay, that will work itself out, I think. I can't really influence that all that much today. But what
Right.
I can do is I can recognize the need to separate out my Conan the Barbarian brain with my Sherlock brain and stay in Sherlock brain and teach my son to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, figure out how to deal with the drama that he had 2 weeks ago at his school where he got sent home because he was menacing a girl. Right?
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a place for the Conan brain, in the world,
No
but
question.
we have to figure out where that is. So,
Yep.
what, like I said, as we sit here and we talk about, some of the things that young men are facing, is there one in particular that you kind of feel like stands out as sort of the biggest problem? It's hard to say because there's so many different avenues where we get attacked and where our
Yeah.
young men get attacked today. But is there one that sort of hits you in the heart as like, man, this really is kind of the top of the heap of the biggest issue that young men have to like either face or overcome or deal with?
Yeah, I think so. I'll answer that in two ways. The first is the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem, in my view, is this fixed pie mentality, zero sum mentality. There is, so I think I mentioned earlier about how there's kind of a narrative on the left about how masculinity is bad and needs to be suppressed. And then there's a narrative on the far right that is no, no, no. The stuff that you call toxic is actually a virtue. And masculinity is all about being the biggest asshole you can be. And like I said, I don't believe that either of those are good visions of healthy masculinity. And um, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
It's okay. The biggest issue, yeah, the biggest issue,
Yeah, the biggest
faces
issue,
men. So
and the root cause of that
right.
is both of those camps are viewing the world as this fixed pie mentality. Either men succeed or women succeed, and you have to pick one. So which are we going to pick? And the left is picking, well, it's women's turn, so we need them to succeed. And the guys over here are picking, no, 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 we don't want to lose our power. We want to succeed. So we need to push women back in the 1950s. Again, neither of those strategies is actually going to work. They're going to get you're just going to that creates conflict, and conflict is going it's just there's way too much friction in that. You're going to lose. What we need is, it's what capitalism teaches us is one plus one often equals more than two. And there's value in this energy. The more men succeed, the more women succeed, and vice versa. That's the whole deal. And so that's kind of the root cause of that. But that's very difficult to put in a tweet. And there are specific tactical issues that we have to deal with. How do we deal with screen time? How do we deal with the fact that we now have in our phones, we have a casino in our pocket because, online gambling was just legalized, and gambling triggers something in our brains. As men, we are more risk aggressive, less risk averse than women. And gambling, I mean, the vast majority of people who end up in rehab for gambling are men. It's like 90%.
Yeah.
And it is creating gambling is I mean, it can be a fun thing to go do, but abusing it is really, 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 really bad. And that entire industry is just there to cultivate that in our boys. And the fact is that there's a bunch of stuff like this. Women now outnumber men on college campuses by, in some cases, 2 to 1. And this does not bode well and these are tactical things that we have to overcome. We have to figure out how to overcome. How do you make sure that your son has the emotional flexibility, the emotional intelligence to survive and thrive in our culture today? And it's not about, necessarily, touchy feely or suppress your masculine instincts. It's about what about my masculine instincts needs to be cultivated in order to achieve excellence in today's world. And that's, those are probably the two ways I would answer the question, that root cause thing, and then this practice of, man, how do I cultivate my masculinity in such a way that it aligns with our culture instead of is antagonistic against it.
Love it. Love it. And agree with you on both those points. Very well thought out. You can tell that you've been working on this for a little while. You didn't just wake up and
I'm
say, "Hey, I have an
trying.
opinion."
I'm trying, man.
That's wonderful. I love it. So I'm curious, when's the book coming out? I mean, because you're just laying out gold for everybody here.
Yeah, we'll be, I'll be in touch about that. That's not in the works yet, or it's not even planned yet. I'm still muddling through trying to have meaningful information to convey to people through the podcast.
He's like, "Let me get past 15 episodes, bro. Okay, then we'll talk
That's
about the
right.
book."
That's
I
right.
got you. All right. Yeah, not too much. I love that. And again, I think we spend too much time, as men talking about the problems, of course, and not enough talking about the solutions. I love that you're looking at it from a big picture standpoint too, and saying, "Hey, here we are, and here's the root cause of the problem." For parents who are out there who are like you. You know, they have a young child, they've got a young son. They're looking at the landscape. They're saying, "Hey, you know, man, I got to do something, right?" Um, where can, in your opinion, and with what you found in your own personal life, where can men sort of start addressing this entire issue, and you know, maybe starting to make a difference just at home, something like that?
Yeah. Uh, it starts with finding other men and opening up and being vulnerable. That's, it's like the situation with my friend who told me he was getting a divorce. And I realized that we don't talk about stuff. And this is like my closest friend from grade school. And that's insane. And the fact is, the vast majority of men don't feel like they have anyone to turn to. The vast majority of men have nobody to turn to. That is a real problem. And so the first place it starts is find another man and just open up. I challenged myself about a month ago. There was this guy that I had met through a business function, and I just really liked this guy. And I want to be friends with this guy, but I didn't quite know how to do it. And in before I had embarked on this journey, I probably would have just let it go. And instead, I ended up inviting him to lunch. And we had a businessy thing to talk to, so I kind of had that excuse also. But I ended up sitting down with him at lunch and I said, "Listen, I got to tell you, man, I think you're awesome. And I want to be friends with you. And part of the reason I invited you on this lunch is like, I just think we should spend more time together." And I can't tell you how difficult and how vulnerable that made me feel.
Yeah.
And it was one of the hardest things. Strangely enough, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I did it. And, and he had a great response. And, it actually hasn't really worked. We live in different parts of town and it's hard to get together and all of those things. Uh, but that the fact of opening up and the fact of kind of being willing to do that has started me exercising that muscle a little bit more, and it has really opened my eyes to a bunch of possibilities that wasn't there. So the very first piece of advice that I would give anybody is go find your brotherhood, man. And the bigger the brotherhood, the better. Again, as I said kind of in the beginning, we used to have these institutions. We used to go to church and we used to have sports leagues and all of that stuff. And a lot of those things are crumbling. And that's an opportunity for us because we can be intentional about how we rebuild them. But it's also a problem because we need to do it. We need to actually do it when it. So it's a lot more effort. You used to be able to be passive, and now you can't be.
Right. Right. Well, I love that. And I know a lot of guys just heard that loud and clear. So, you know, finding that brotherhood where you have that support for, you know, it's a lot easier to become vulnerable when you're not out on an island, you know, the
Yeah.
only one trying to do it. So I can appreciate that advice for sure.
Yeah, and not only get that support, but give that support.
Mm.
There is something that is uniquely masculine about holding up another man. And, put yourself out there. It is hard. It is actually really hard to put yourself out there and offer that support to people because it feels like, oh, well, am I accusing him of being weak or something like that? And no, you're not. You can, I mean, giving someone the opportunity to receive your support is also just an incredibly masculine thing to do. And giving your friends the opportunity to support you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, before we wrap this up, I definitely want to make sure everybody has a way to reach out to you. So let's make sure we get that in here. How do people contact you, find you, reach out?
Absolutely. We're on all the socials at Raising Men and raising.men is our website. My email address is Shaun, SHAUN, at raising.men. And definitely, reach out to just like you. I monitor the DMs, I monitor the emails, and I reply to them personally. And you can reach out to me in any of those ways. And please try the podcast, download it, like, subscribe, Let me know what you think. I am really, really eager. Like I said, my mission is to put something amazing out there into the world. And so all feedback that I can get, I really, really cherish, even if it's constructive.
Awesome. All right. I take it the hate hasn't started coming your way yet.
A little bit. I get some of it. My attitude about that is you just got to ignore that. That's just a wolf you can't feed.
Right.
And pour your energy into the positive aspect of things, and let the haters hate. That's fine. That's what they get off on, and I get it. That's what they need to do. Okay.
Right. Beautiful. Well, I'm glad that hasn't hit you yet. So that's good. That's really good. That's good.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah. But hey, it's like you said, you just sort of like pass on, move on, let them do their thing. Let me ask you this, Shaun, just as we kind of wrap things up. I want to make sure that we got this all out there for you. I love what you're doing. The podcast is great, so folks, you got to go check it out. Listen to Raising Men. You can find it easily. I mean, go to Spotify, search it. It comes up with his face and his name. Can't miss the guy. All right. But is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that maybe we talked about, but you want to make sure that you double down on, before we, wrap things up, or maybe just one more really good piece of advice you want to leave for people? I'm going to leave it to you. The floor is for you for the last minute. Go ahead and kind of close us out however you would like, and we'll rock and roll.
Keep it real simple for you. It's one of the hardest things that as men we can give ourselves is the grace to understand that we're doing our best. And I think, if I could finish on one thing, and this is something I have to remind myself all the time, is you're a great freaking parent. You're a great parent. So keep it up.
Love that. I mean, short, sweet, to the point. Perfect, man. Great way to wrap us up. All right. Husband, father of two, tech leader, figuring out what it really means to raise boys in today's world, and host of the hit podcast, Raising Men, Shaun Dawson. Shaun, thanks for being with us today, brother. Appreciate it so much, and love the messaging. Really do. It was great having you here.
It's been a real honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, that's been another incredible episode of the Power Man podcast. And the reason we have such powerful men come on here with these powerful messages is because, we are united in hoping that you are able to find your power so that you can become a better protector, a better provider, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, so that you can be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you have value. It's because you're worth it, and it's because you matter. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.